Us humans are all descendants of the people from Africa from around 200,000 years ago. We all came from there, that is known. Fast forward to today, and you have people that look like me, people that look like Brit, and in small town Australia, you have people that even look like this. But in this episode, we're going to focus on the people of Polynesia, where they came from and how they got there. The Polynesian Triangle is 13 million square miles in area. It goes from Aotearoa, my home, up to Hawaii and over to Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island. We have actually sailed all the way from Mexico all the way down to Aotearoa and then sailed up to Papua New Guinea, where we helped a man called Robert build one of his own canoes. But I'm pretty sure you can't sail to Hawaii on a little outrigger like this. I'm also slightly embarrassed to say that we had Starlink across the entire Pacific. But when we weren't watching Netflix, I often found myself wondering, how did the Polynesians sail all the way out to somewhere so remote like Rapa Nui, the most remote island in the world? And why is there South American DNA in the people of Rapa Nui? How did the kumara, which is native to South America, make it all the way to Aotearoa? What is the paper mulberry plant, which was used to make cloth, which is native to Asia, doing in Hawaii? Well, in this episode, we're going to be interviewing some of the best navigators on this planet. Wayfinders who have personally sailed to all corners of the Polynesian Triangle without charts or instruments, only using the stars, the sun, the wind, the current, the clouds, the birds, the swell, the land. Well, you get the idea, Mother Nature. These gentlemen are called pole navigators, and there are only 7 of them left in the world. And although they'll never admit this themselves, they have mastered the art of wayfinding. And when they speak, you learn something.
On those islands, they have 2 species of seabirds that fly out in the morning, fish and go back. So you're not going to see them way in the deep sea. So if you took every one of those 78 islands and you drew a 120-mile radius, there's this whole giant web of these seabirds. And then you need to learn how they fly. Sunrise, they come off the island and they're flying straight to where they're going to fish. So the bearing from where that bird's coming is the bearing to the island. Right. And they fly like butterflies when they fish. But when they go home, that's the sunset time. It's the time when they rise off the water and then they fly straight. So the bearing of the bird is the bearing to the island.
So here in Polynesia, getting Po Navigator status is the highest honor you can get. But it's not something you can just go and enroll in. You have to be specifically invited to train under the master, who at the time was the late Mao Piailug. Mao was arguably the last man on the planet willing to share his knowledge of navigation, and without him it may have been lost forever.
For me, I started as a young man. I was 18 years old, and Hłkťle'a came to my island in the Cook Islands. But I'd heard about this voyaging culture for a long time, in the songs and in the chants, and I was fascinated by it. And I got the opportunity to sail on Hłkťle'a, and Mao Piailug was on board. And during that time, Mao came to me and says, I want to teach you navigation. And for me, all I wanted to do was be a crew member. So I went back to the other guys and said, Mao wants to teach me navigation. They said, what did you say? I said, well, no. And they said, are you stupid? He doesn't tell people that he wants to teach you. People go to ask him. You go back over there and tell him you want to learn. And ever since that day, I just stayed by his side, learned with Nainoa Thompson and the other pole navigators that are here, navigators, and here we are today. We're pretty much the tupuna of the next generation.
So what is it exactly that these gentlemen have gone out and achieved? Well, in 1950, a man by the name of Thor Heyerdahl wrote a book called the Kontiki that claimed that Polynesians sailed from east to west across the Pacific without intent and accidentally came across the Pacific Islands. He claimed that they were not intelligent enough to navigate the oceans and that they aimlessly took to the sea on crude rafts rather than sophisticated sailing vessels.
The academic conversation was that at the time they're like, oh, they're not smart enough in the Pacific to intentionally voyage around. They haphazardly went on rafts. And so Thor Heyerdahl wrote a book called Kontiki, sold 21 million copies, that's how we moved in the Pacific, was on rafts. Which is kind of wild. I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to just jump on a raft for a month and just hope I find an island, right?
The reason that this was so widely accepted at the time was that there was such little evidence to suggest otherwise. Polynesian canoes are made entirely out of wood and leave basically no archaeological remains as evidence for scientists to study. By the time Captain Cook arrived in Polynesia in the 1700s, navigation was already becoming a dying art. Not that they would have shared their knowledge with him anyway. Ocean navigation was always considered top secret amongst Polynesians, as sharing this information is effectively saying that your secret fishing spots are now a free-for-all. But Captain Cook did write about their navigation once, saying, "The sun served as a compass by day, and the moon and stars by night." Apparently he sounded like David Attenborough, but that basically was the extent of the written history about the voyages back in the day, which leaves a lot up to the imagination. The other part is oral history, but if you consider a generation to be roughly 30 years, in as little as 2 generations, or approximately 60 years, so much oral history can be misconstrued, or worse, lost forever. I sure as well can't remember a lot of what my granddad told me, so imagine extrapolating that over centuries. So this led to the formation of the Polynesian Voyaging Society in 1972, by 3 men who wanted to disprove the claims made by the now famous Kontiki book that this was all an accident. But this was going to be very hard when none of them knew the art of celestial navigation.
So Ben Finney took the charge as the academic leading that piece. We had Kane, just kept dreaming up these canoes, and he was drawing them as an amazing artist that he is. And so he worked with a naval architect to also make sure that the dreams turned into something we could sail. And we had the canoe with Tommy Holmes, our waterman.
It soon became quite alarming that no one in Polynesia possessed the knowledge of ocean navigation. Here they were constructing this incredible replica of a voyaging canoe, or waka in Hawaiian, when no one knew how to navigate it. What I would like to sort of understand is how close we came to losing this art.
That's a good question. If you look at it as practical kind of techniques and knowledge that was in the past, we pretty much lost it all. What I want to believe is that because we come from them, that we never lost it. It just went to sleep. To navigate, you just have to have that relationship with nature. It's all there. It's all there. You just need to know how to read it, how to see it. So you needed the dreamers to launch a canoe, you needed the vehicle, and then you had to go find the master.
And the master that they were seeking was Hłkťle'a, a man from Micronesia who was willing to share his knowledge of navigation, and took on the monumental task of preparing a crew to sail from Hawaii to Tahiti with absolutely no instruments. It was an incredible fluke that they even found him at all, and if it wasn't for him, the chances of this ancient knowledge being revived was slim to none. So they had found their master, and the vessel that was going to take them all the way to Tahiti was the Hłkťle'a. There wasn't a single metal fitting on her. She was completely lashed together with lines and was simply the brainchild of Kane, who had seen her in his dreams. She was possibly the first deep-sea voyaging canoe to be built in 600 years, and they were going to attempt to cross an ocean using only natural navigation aids, which had not been attempted for centuries before them. The crew were going to have to do some serious training in order to be competent in the ways of their ancient navigators. And how important was that first journey to French Polynesia? That was a big gamble, right?
It was hard because the day we launched this canoe 50 years ago, the community was fractured. There were strangers here that prayed for this canoe blindly. And then the larger group was the ones that never showed up. They weren't here because why come here? Hawaiian things have no value. And so why would I spend my time as something that's going to essentially fail? And then there was the third part of the community that was more of the establishment, the big corporations, the big institutions that did not want this canoe to find Tahiti because it changed everything.
Right.
And so there was tremendous pressure on that crew, more than they really understood. And it's really in hindsight, because if they had failed, then the larger community, see, they don't know. They're still stupid. They're still gonna fail more than succeed. So the stakes are really high, and we didn't even know it.
And as Nainoa just mentioned, this day was exactly 50 years since the launch of the Hłkťle'a and the whole reason that we were in Hawaii. We had been invited to tell the story by a Hawaiian shoe company who had been supporting the Polynesian Voyaging Society for the last 20 years.
What's up, dude? Good to meet you.
This is James and Colette.
For every pair of Olakais that's sold, a portion of proceeds go to our foundation called Hłkťle'a, and Polynesian Voyaging Society is one of the beneficiaries of Hłkťle'a.
Do you make a better sandal than that?
I think we do. I'm confident we can find something better than that.
We got a deal. Finally throw these things out.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
The Polynesian Voyaging Society was one of the first beneficiaries we supported when we started the company. So that's how we started.
Yeah.
So we thought, let's make a limited edition sandal. Call it the Hłkťle'a. Tomorrow night at the convention center, we're going to auction them off.
Right.
And all the proceeds will go back to the Polynesian Voyaging Society.
Serious? Like that's an actual sale off the Hłkťle'a?
That's part of the cloth from the Hłkťle'a.
Serious?
Yes. This is the red, the iconic red sail that you find here.
So if you can't tell, Hawaiians are very proud of where they come from, and it's pretty amazing to see them supporting each other like this. It was an honor to be here at Kualoa, where Hłkťle'a had been launched half a century ago to try change the storybooks of Polynesian history.
Hłkťle'a has rushed to the arms of Tangaroa. The great voyaging canoe has come into her own.
It was a year after her launch in 1976 that she set off on her maiden voyage to Tahiti, with so much riding on her success. Ma was obviously the navigator and had the daunting task of finding their way 2,500 miles across the Pacific at the whim of Mother Nature. This single voyage, if successful, would show the world that it is entirely possible that Polynesians could have successfully navigated through Polynesia. And lo and behold, a month later, they arrived in Tahiti to a crowd of 17,000 people. That's half of the island's entire population, because a part of their ancestral history had just been rewritten.
During that time, a lot of people doubted that. A lot of people doubted indigenous knowledge and the ability for Polynesians to even navigate. And Papa Hłkťle'a was the one that navigated the canoe, and he proved them all wrong.
It was the trip of a lifetime, and the cultural impact between the Tahitians and Hawaiians was enormous. Papa Mau and the Hłkťle'a crew had shown that the Polynesians were in fact capable of a whole lot more than those so-called history books had suggested. But maybe there was a little more than just skill involved.
And so in many ways, we're still in kindergarten, trying to understand that deeper side of the navigation, the more spiritual side. It's not a coincidence. So many times I went out there that things happen that we can't explain it. And from the Western point of view, we can't explain it. It didn't exist. I believe from the Pacific Polynesian point of view, it's mana. And we learned that from you. We learned that from Aotearoa.
And not only did they make it to Tahiti, but they safely navigated Hłkťle'a straight back to Hawaii, which would have been the original ancestral voyaging route of the indigenous Tahitians migrating to Hawaii all those centuries ago.
Hłkťle'a is meant for one voyage, and it was just to go to Tahiti and back and to write a paper. But really, once she was in the water, she started waking up so much more. This is Hłkťle'a. She is the one who woke this up. And she's birthed 20 other big canoes around the Pacific, so our Tahitians, our Aotearoa Maori.
But let's take a moment to go back in time and find out where Polynesians originally came from. And to do this, we have to go all the way back to Asia, to the country we now know as Taiwan. It is here that the Polynesians originated from, known as Austronesians some 5,000 to 7,000 years ago. The Austronesians migrated south through the near Oceania islands of Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands, eventually making their way down to Tonga, Fiji and Samoa. These people were known as the Lapita culture, and remains of their pottery can be found right out into remote Oceania. In relative terms, the ocean voyages that they had to do between these countries were relatively short.
We don't think that the use of the stars would have been there. It would have been rudimentary compared to what you needed to develop when you went from Fiji, Samoa and Tonga and found the Marquesas. The breadth and the distances that they had to travel became more. The historian said they couldn't have gone to the east because of the prevailing winds. And if you're there for thousands of years, you're going to learn how to harness those the right winds to go in the direction you want to go. You know, and that's the difference between people that live on the ocean and people that read about it.
Right.
And so there is evidence that shows that the Polynesians arrived in the Marquesas Islands around 0 to 300 AD. This is an enormous 1,800-mile sail upwind from Samoa, but there is now enough ancient DNA evidence to suggest that despite being hard to imagine, this is in fact what happened.
In Western schools, we tend to believe that if you can't measure it, or if you don't have a mathematical equation that will tell you the answer that you want, then we tend to say it's not possible. But I don't think that's true. For instance, Te Aurere was saying they can't sail east because they couldn't sail to the wind. See, that's when you put that boundary and say that because I don't understand it, therefore they couldn't do it. And then Andrew Sharp was from New Zealand. He was a world-renowned anthropologist. Said no, they had canoes, but they weren't intelligent enough to navigate more than 100 miles. So you're setting boundaries, right? And people start to believe in those boundaries where I just don't think our ancestors did. If you look at the migration, it was east because it makes sense because the prevailing winds are from the east. So if they go east and they don't find anything, they can sail back. You'd go to the place that the winds would allow you to come back if you couldn't find anything.
Which makes complete sense to me. As they were exploring the oceans around them, they would surely have set off in the direction that would enable them to return when they were running out of supplies. In other words, explore upwind and return downwind.
What it is you go out and you see all of the different clues that you're trying to find a way to go east, and then you get so far and you're running out of your resources, and so you turn back. It might take you 10 days to get out there, and it'll only take you 2 days to get back because you're beating into a strong southeast trade. Then you learn about what the weather conditions are like at certain times of year. So you go out those sides, oh, you'll go a bit further, carry some more food, go out a little bit further, don't quite get to anywhere. Or you find something and realise, I've got to go back and get more resources. So you go that, and as you're doing these things, you're also learning about the clues and the stars, and you're creating, all these things to help you to find your way back again to where you ended up, and hopefully go a bit further. Pretty cool, eh? Yeah.
After doing this for years, decades, even centuries, you can start to understand how they eventually discovered the Marquesas Islands and even had the knowledge and skills to turn around and come back again. From here though, there seems to be a long pause in ocean voyaging for close to 1,000 years, and scientists are not exactly sure why. But then in around 12 or 1300 AD, the three most fascinating voyages began in my opinion. The great migrations from the Marquesas Islands to Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and Aotearoa. These are the longest ocean voyages known to man, and the fact that they were able to navigate to the tiny island of Rapa Nui without instruments is absolutely mind-blowing. Considering the distances, this is literally like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Meanwhile, on the other side of Asia, the Austronesians had already settled all the way over in Madagascar. How incredible is that? Today, with the help of both modern and ancient DNA testing, it can be seen for certain that Polynesians have indigenous American blood in them, which is where the history starts to get a little hazy. Fatuhiva's Native American ancestry goes back the furthest and is actually traced back to Colombia, centuries before any European contact. So the question is, did the Polynesians go to South America, or did the South Americans come to Polynesia? As Brittany quite comically mentioned, who in their right mind would set sail downwind from South America knowing very well that there is no way to come back with such a raft?
I don't know about you guys, but I'm not going to just jump on a raft for a month and just hope I find an island, right?
So common sense alone would say that if Polynesians could make it all the way to Rapa Nui, why on earth would they not be able to get to South America and back? Hence the mystery of how the tasty kumara made its way all the way down to Aotearoa has been solved in my humble opinion, particularly with the help of our trusty pole navigators.
And we proved that in 2012 when we went from Aotearoa up to Tubuai in the Austral Islands, and then we went straight east into those so-called southeasterly trades to Mangarewa, and from Mangarewa then down to Rapa Nui. The one thing about academics is they look at it and they say, you can't do it. And then they say, we're the experts. Okay, no, you're not. Have you ever done it?
But there is one crucial bit of information that we haven't covered yet, which was one of the main navigation tools which was taught to everyone by Mao in the 1970s, and that is the star compass.
Imagine yourself being out in the middle of the ocean and you can't see any of the islands around you. All of these directions, they're all around you. They exist, but you know, I guess when you look out to the horizon, you don't literally see a sign that says south.
Right.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you can use are stars as wayfinding points to orient yourself. And so what we do is, as these stars are lower in the sky, maybe as they appear to be rising, we recognize them, so we know who they are, and we know the direction that they represent. And so if you can do that, you can use that as a clue to orient yourself and your canoe and head in where you want to go.
Your father was a pro navigator.
Yes.
And did he teach you everything you knew?
My father is my primary teacher. I've done 2 voyages to Tahiti and 1 voyage back. So my fastest crossing was 16 days, but the longest crossing was about 21 days. We use the star compass, we use stars, we use the wind, ocean swells. We have 32 different directional points in our compass. And like I shared with you earlier, all of those, these different points, again, our job is to know the star and then know the house in which it appears to be rising in or setting in. And then if you know that, now you can use that as a clue to orient yourself and head where you want to go. In Hawaiian, hema means left. Right in Hawaiian is akau, so extending my right arm. And these are both the directions for north and south.
Right.
As an apprentice navigator, we can see these little marks at night. We're aligning, trying to align the stars. Okay, it's aligned with that mark. Right. So then that means that we are going, I don't know, like akau or hikina or hema or la ko'olao. Yeah.
Right.
But so all of it really is within you. Yeah.
Knowing the direction you are heading is one thing, but after days and days at sea, one of the most important things to know is how far you have come in order to know your exact position. And this was done by the Polynesians without even writing anything down. The fact that they could find their way from Hawaii to Tahiti and back is absolutely astonishing.
Some people call it like dead reckoning, but we have our own formula. We've got our own formula on the canoe. And so we're keeping track of, you know, distance that we have passed by knowing the speed of our canoe and also time. And so what we'll do is we'll look over and you can count the bubbles that as it goes from 1 yako, so that's a part of the canoe, and it passes how many seconds it takes to get to the last yako. And so we have this very simple, for me, it's easy for me to understand, but 5 seconds would translate to 5 knots. And so if it's 3 seconds, it translates to a little bit over 8 knots. And so that's speed, right?
Right.
And we use the stars to tell time. And so once we've understood like that distance and we understand the course that we're heading, right? We can keep track like along the line. We're also measuring the height of stars. So sometimes we need to recalibrate and like, okay, so maybe I thought that, hey, we were at 9 degrees north, but then I go out and at night I measure the stars and I'm like, oh, actually, we're not at 9 degrees north, we're at 8 degrees north. So we have these little things that can help corrections. So they happen all the time.
You know, the navigator only knows where they are by memorizing where they come from. So sunrise and sunsets, we're just accumulating where we move based on where we came from. You can only know where you come from by watching nature. It forces that discipline. So we're up 21 hours in good weather, we're up 22 hours in bad weather. We sleep in, my period of sleep is 20 minutes. We do a lot of them in a day, but we had this blessing to be so close to the natural world, but also the obligation that once you start learning about nature, you got to protect it.
Another crucial point about voyaging was their knowledge of the swell. During the day, the sun is high in the sky and difficult to use to navigate. The clouds are moving, the stars aren't visible, the wind is changing a couple of times a day, so the only thing you have left is the swell. A master navigator will be able to tell which swell is a result of the prevailing winds and therefore be able to use it to hold a course throughout the day until the sun sets towards the west in the evening. But if it's overcast for a few days, there's no stars as well, so it's the swell that's their guiding star, so to speak. But I've personally lived at sea for 17 years and I can assure you that it is very seldom that there is only one swell direction placed upon you. So identifying the primary swell in choppy seas in order to navigate is the art that gets passed down from generation to generation. And today, this knowledge is getting shared all throughout Polynesia.
This canoe has gravity. It brings people together. Today is a demonstration of people from all over the world. From South Africa, from Aotearoa, they're from Virginia, they're from Taiwan. So that wasn't the way it was when the canoe was launched. It was just local people here.
Right.
So it's a testimony about how far we've come.
Right.
We nearly lost it.
Right.
But you can see here the pride and everybody. If it wasn't for Hłkťle'a, I wouldn't be here. It's all about that revival. It's all because of Hłkťle'a.
Yeah.
We're all from the same family. We all grew up. All those guys performing the haka. We all grew up together in voyaging. And they come and sail our canoes. We sail their canoes. We come up here. We sail our Hawaiian canoes because we're all one family. And that's what Polynesians are all about.
I'm not sure how to describe that, but that was really quite emotional for me talking to him. Just every word he said just hit me like a ton of bricks.
It's not just about wayfinding. It's about finding your way.
Right.
With family, with traditions, with culture, with language. It's the power of not so much identity, but finding one's identity.
Right.
And then putting the traditions of old into practice in this modern day.
There's just something about that man that, and I felt it in the Marquesas when we first met him as well. There's just this humbleness and wisdom to him that it's hard to describe. This is a lot more than just being about a canoe. This has massive cultural significance. There's something very, very special happening in this place right now.
You're getting out there, and the main thing is you're telling the story.
Yeah.
You're collecting stories and you're sharing more. That's the power.
To have Tua Pittman say that what we are doing is powerful will stay with me forever, and so will witnessing the unison of all of the Polynesian cultures at this event. People had flown in from all around the world to be here, and as I mentioned, it's about finding out where we all came from and unveiling the rich ancestral history of the Polynesians and subsequent cultures living here today.
We're just trying to follow a path that's meaningful and making sure young people are with us.
And they're the ones who are keeping that practice alive in their homes as well.
A revival.
A revival. So it's just like, I don't know, it's just such a cool thing right now. Like, this is only the first 50 years, right, of this reawakening. What are we going to do for the next 50?
We don't recruit, so we allow the test to happen, and young people don't come. We're doing something terribly wrong. And if they don't come, we're not relevant anymore. And so then you have to choose to change or tie the canoe up.
For us, it's about supporting our mates coming up here and making sure that they know that we're still connected to them.
Yeah.
Because we are. They came to us in like 1985, and our chief, Sir James Henare was his name, he thanked them for coming.
Yeah.
And proving that our people could navigate,
Right.
and could pull islands out of the ocean. And what he said was, "Be awesome for us to repay, the honour you've given us by arriving here, by repaying that by our building a canoe and coming back to you."
Wow.
And so 1995 was the culmination of their promise. So that promise was made 10 years before then.
Right. So Jacko was part of that voyage from the Marquesas to Hawaii, which proved that a waka from Aotearoa, made out of 2 dugout kauri trees, could also be navigated to the outer corners of Polynesia if the right knowledge had been acquired.
We navigated up to Hawaii from the Marquesas. That was our test.
So there has been a resurgence of voyaging canoes built around Polynesia, but the original canoe of this late modern era will always be Hłkťle'a, which we got to see up close with Hawaiian legend Archie Kalepa. How many miles have you done on her, Archie?
Oh man, I've probably done like over 20,000 miles, easy.
Wow. So much history with this boat, and it goes so far beyond the sailing. Getting a special jet ski ride out to her now, it's unbelievable. It was a sacred day for Hłkťle'a, marking 50 years since she was originally pushed into this very bay, but it had not always been smooth sailing, unfortunately. In 1978, on her second attempt to sail to Tahiti from right here in Hawaii, she capsized, leaving all of her crew stranded on an upside-down canoe. On board was Eddie Aikau, one of the best big wave surfers in the world, who selflessly insisted that he paddle his surfboard back towards Hawaii, miles and miles away, to get help for the crew to get rescued. Not taking no for an answer, Eddie paddled off into the distance, and tragically, was never ever seen again. There is now a prestigious big wave surf competition held in his honor, but that fateful day will forever be a stark reminder that even the most competent waterman can succumb to the mercy of Mother Nature. It's mind-boggling to think about how many men, women, and children have fallen victim to the Pacific Ocean as they voyaged across her for centuries on end. But eventually, conquering the entire Pacific wasn't enough for the Hłkťle'a, and in 2013 she set off on a worldwide voyage, sailing without any instruments whatsoever, for 6 years, visiting 150 ports and 18 nations to complete a circumnavigation of our planet. This is an unprecedented accomplishment, especially on a canoe held together entirely by rope, which adds up to 5 miles in length, by the way.
And so what you're standing on is this wa'akaulua, so it's a double-hulled canoe. So this is one canoe on this side, another on this side, bound together by these yakos. And the yakos are the cross beams, and so from yako to yako is one bedroom. So
we're on the Hłkťle'a right now. This is where they sleep. Mind blowing.
Just two Polynesian voyagers trying to have a good time.
This canoe is just tied together. My name is... Even the cleats are lashed on. The main bollard for the anchor rod is lashed down. Yes, she has done around 275,000 miles around the world, training dozens of aspiring navigators to learn the art of ancient Polynesian navigation, with minimal differences between how it was done then and how they sail Hłkťle'a today.
So bathrooms are back here, and you're like, really? There's nothing here? Yeah, correct, there's nothing here, because it's all on the side. So we're gonna use buckets to get water out for showering, etc. And then if you need to go, you pull the curtain, a little bit of privacy. You are wearing your safety harness. You tie yourself to the canoe to just be sure, and then you just do your business overboard. If there's waves, then you're lucky. You have the built-in bidet. Correct.
And the man spearheading this society of voyagers, Nainoa Thompson, has been the glue which has held this dream together for decades. And he is one of those people whose sheer presence leaves an impact on you. And I found myself having to go and reflect on his words to truly understand the deepness in which his message was bestowed upon me.
Being on the ocean so long, I fall in love with the earth. It's so infinitely beautiful. It's systems of distribution of heat and distribution of water and the ability to create life. And so Hłkťle'a to me is like the vaccine against this humanity falling apart. And the basis is that in the end, it's that power of love. I want to sail, but I don't want to arrive.
Wow. It's a lot to take in, and this is making me want to explore this more. It's a lot deeper than understanding the wind, the current, and the waves.
We came to Hawaii expecting to cover the 50th anniversary of a voyaging canoe. What we left with was so much more than that. We met a group of people defying science, silencing the skeptics, following their hearts in search of the truth. Their journey is not only about understanding Mother Nature, but to live in harmony with her. I'll leave you with these final words from Nainoa, which I've listened to over and over, which you can interpret in many ways, but it relates to every single one of us.
Start learning about how can I help advance the future of the earth that's going to be good enough for our kids. And so it's just where I am now. I'm only going towards one island, and it's the planet Earth. Yeah.
Wow.
Hłkťle'a